So as you guys know, we do have this custom Mystic Summon event going on. And while there are some very good choices to actually choose from, there are also some very bad units in this pool and just in general that are Moonlight 5 stars. And we're going to talk about the 5 worst Moonlight 5 stars that really need a buff ASAP. Now before we actually talk about these units, I just wanted to let you guys know that if you guys want to switch the banner, you can do it anytime. So don't feel like if you start on one unit, you're kind of screwed. As you guys can see, I can literally switch to whatever unit I want multiple times. There's no limit to it, so you can keep pulling on this banner. It's a perfect banner to catch up on those 5 stars and even 4-star units that you are missing out on. So the first unit we're going to talk about that needs to be buffed or should be buffed ASAP, and actually a lot of people have been asking for his buff because he hasn't been meta or at least used at all in almost 4 or 5 years, I'd say. And this is Blood Moon Haste. And Blood Moon Haste, his main mechanic is that he pretty much counters revive units, because when an enemy is revived, everyone gets a barrier and immunity on your team. This barrier is pretty huge because it scales with his max HP. And also it resets the cooldown of his S3, which in theory is like a single target nuke that penetrates defense but cannot crit. And this will also give your team mitigation while it's available. So the way people play Blood Moon Haste is going to be basically you just bring him into revive units and you kind of just wait for units to get revived, right? And right before a unit gets revived, you want to S3 to get the damage off, and then it'll reset your S3 when something gets revived. Now the thing is, there's not really a lot of good revive units currently because there's so many counters to revive, and Blood Moon Haste is one of the worst counters because even if you go against a reviving unit, Blood Moon Haste is only really there for his S2. His S1 damage is really bad, like this is a pretty bad skill. His S3 is also not that hard hitting, especially in the current meta, right? Where a lot of units have better gear now. In the times where he was good, the gear score, like the average gear score was a lot lower, so his S3 actually did okay damage. But now it's pretty awful in the current times. And also because, you know, if you are playing against revive units like Destina, which is probably the best one, what they actually can do is just sit there and not use the S3 to revive, but just heal your team. Also, if you're picking him into Holy Sacrifice units like Abyssal Euphine, Blood Moon Haste is just going to sit there and do nothing but proc counters for Abyssal Euphine. By the time Abyssal Euphine is about to die, she probably has already S3'd because you're playing 3v4, and that just makes him very bad. He's also very bad against Seal, so Noggle destroys him, and because he's a dark unit, Savior Aiden pretty much just one-shots him almost. So not a great unit, definitely needs a buff. I don't really know what he needs, maybe more damage in his S3, but I honestly think that he just needs a complete rework, or he needs just more damage, or just something changed, or maybe an exclusive equipment. If he had like CR pushing in his S1, maybe it'd be better, I don't really know. He just seems like he's not that good of a unit. Probably one of the worst Moonlight 5 stars, if not the worst right now. Next up, we have Ruell. So Ruell used to be one of the best Soul Weavers in the game for PvP, especially in Guild Wars offense, as a dark bait. And that is because she's light, she just tanks, you know, with Water's Origin, never dies, and she can heal herself and even revive a teammate. But the thing is, she's just a worse version of a unit for that now. SC Doris, Specially Changed Doris, is just way better because she has a lot more healing, CR pushing, and stuff like that. And a big problem with Ruell is that she's way too slow. Her S3 cooldown is 4 turns, it's very slow, and she just ends up holding it a lot of the times, which by that time, your team will be plagued with injuries because injuries, especially like ML Shu, are very strong, making her revive when it actually goes off pretty weak. You're going to be reviving a unit with like half their max health usually. And also her S1 is pretty weak. It's like Destina's S1, but Destina has a better kit, so it makes Destina better than Ruell. And honestly, her S2 is meh as well. Destina's S2 is better because you actually CR push them even more. This barrier, although it's okay, CR push is usually better in most scenarios. Pretty much just the worst version of her RGB counterpart, Destina. And I don't really know how they can change her. I think she needs some better speed, or I'm not too sure. If you guys have any ideas how to help Ruell, let me know in the comments down below. The next bad unit that should be buffed in my opinion, and I'm really sad to say this because I really tried to make him work, is going to be MLK Run. I actually pitied him, which was a big mistake because he is extremely hard to build and he is very weak. And that is because you need to build him on literally every single stat. You want health, you want defense, you want crit chance, you want some crit damage, you want effect resist. Basically, you need everything besides effectiveness, and maybe I guess speed, but still nice to have Whittle. And that is because you want him to not get stripped of this counter attack, but you still want him to do decent damage, and that is because you want to pretty much build up to max fighting spirit, and then S3 to use your S3 power to actually do extra fixed damage up to 10,000. But the funny thing about this is he's not like ML Landy or ML Euphine, where if you get to 100 fighting spirit you win, because a lot of units can actually live through his S3. I think his S3 can do like what, 15,000 damage-ish, which might seem a lot, but the thing is ML Landy and Abyss Euphine do pretty similar damage with their S3, and they have way more utility. They have counterattacks that proc on their allies getting hit, right, because they're knights. Whereas Twisted Eidolon Charon just kind of sits there with his counterattack buff and doesn't really counterattack because no one hits him, right? And his S1 doesn't really hit that hard unless you counterattack with it, so pretty weak. Also, he's a thief, so it makes him super squishy compared to Abyss Euphine and Navy Captain Landy. And honestly, I think that if they made him a knight, he'd just be way better, like on the same tier as like Abyss Euphine and Navy Captain Landy, because then you'll just put him on Lifesteal set and Elbrus Ritual Sword like Abyss Euphine. He'd pretty much be the same as Abyss Euphine, just a little bit different. So yeah, I'm not too sure what they can do. Honestly, I think what they did with Navy Captain Landy and Abyss Euphine, that's what they wanted to do with Charon, and they saw that this kind of failed. So they just made ML Landy and ML Euphine and kind of just left him in the dumps. But I think Charon was what they wanted. They wanted Charon to be like Abyss Euphine and Navy Captain Landy, and obviously didn't work out. Their kits are pretty similar, honestly, in how they work. It's just that his stats are way lower. He needs way more gear score, and in theory, he's just not that great because you can kind of ignore him, right? Thieves don't have a way to counter unless they get hit themselves. So yeah, it's just a pretty bad unit that definitely needs some help. Honestly, I think you should just change him to a knight, in my opinion. And then next up, we have Fallen Cecilia. And it's funny because she's fallen a lot. She used to be pretty much first picked in RTA all the time. She was in every single defense team. I'm not even kidding. Literally every single defense team in Arena and Guild Wars. She was probably the most broken Moonlight 5-star for about like a year, a little bit longer than that. And that is because she had insane mitigation with this barrier at the start of the battle. And then also you get a barrier at the end of the turn to an ally. And also your S3 is an AoE attack that gives everyone skill nullifier, and this actually deals pretty decent damage. And her S1 was a provoke lock. Now the reason why she's bad now is just because of power creep. I don't think her kit is bad. It's just that a lot of units actually have this 100% provoke now, and it just makes it not as unique. In the past, she was the only one with 100% provoke, or almost the only one. I think she was the only one, right? But now you can have Crow get it, you can have Yulha get it, right? So like pretty much there's like 2 or 3 other knights that have it now. This AoE skill nullifier, she was one of the only units to have this besides like Faithless Ludica, which Fallen Cecilia countered at the time. But now there's a ton of units with AoE skill nullifiers and just skill nullifiers in general. And nowadays this barrier at the start of battle is not good, right? If you pick her, you just face something like a DJ Bassar, and you just insta-lose because this barrier does a ton of damage to your team with barrier inversion. And there's just a ton of units that deal with the barrier as well. So I think she's definitely fallen because of power creep. Her kit just gets completely countered by other units with her S2, and the other parts of her kit are just not as good as it used to be in the past, because just other units can do what she does but better nowadays. She kind of just sits there and just, you know, provokes the unit down and has a barrier every turn, which is not enough for Knight. You have something like SC Ruell, who has mitigation for your entire team, a barrier for your entire team on command, and she actually has a lot more healing and sustain for herself. So yeah, I think Fallen Cecilia definitely needs like an exclusive equipment or something to help her. She just feels pretty weak right now. I'm not too sure what they could give to her. Maybe they can give her like a turn cooldown on this, or maybe they can make it so that her barrier on her S2 is like a little bit stronger. But for now, it just seems like she's just kind of power crept out of the meta. And then last but not least, we have Arbiter Vildred, which is probably going to be a surprise to a lot of people that have been playing since the beginning of the game, have taken a break and come back. And that is because this unit was one of the strongest, if not the strongest, Moonlight 5-stars in the game. And you're going to notice a lot of those units on this list are kind of like that, right? Everyone on this list besides ML Charon in the past, when the game first came out, they were very strong. And that is because of power creep, right? And that just happens in a lot of gacha games. But Arbiter Vildred specifically, He was uncontested damage-wise because of Alexa's Basket. He procced greater attack buff with his Dark Contract Revive. You pretty much just one-shot the enemy with your S3, especially if you soul burn it, which was insane. And he was just super strong. There were not a lot of counters to his S2. Extinction wasn't really that prevalent back in the day. Counters to this Comet Radius push didn't really happen that much. I think there were none, right? And extra turn units didn't really exist that can one-shot him. So yeah, he was a big menace. You just first picked him everywhere. You brought him everywhere for PvE. You brought him everywhere for PvP. And he was insane. Funny enough, the biggest counter to him was Blood Moon Haste. And the only reason why Blood Moon Haste was so good in the past is because Arbiter Villager had no counter really besides him. So that's why he was good. But yeah, Arbiter Villager definitely shaped the meta a long time ago, but now he just falls over. Too many extinctions and too many units that can stop his Comet Radius gain on his S2. And even though all of this goes through, he revives, he procs greater attack buff, and he has his S3. With the current meta and like the current units out, like if you're against like an SC Ruell with Escort buff and Adamant Shield, even if you have greater attack buff, even if you soul burn this, your S3 is not going to even do more than like 70% of the enemy team, and you just die again. So definitely power creep. I think a lot of these units need some help. They've really been just not that good anymore, and I think SMILEGATE has really ignored them, but I really hope they buff these units soon. I think in the most recent bounce patch, they did a good job of identifying the weak units, but hopefully they extend this to these old Moonlight 5 stars, because it really sucks to pull Moonlight 5 star randomly, and then you end up having a weak one. So I really think that they should kind of prioritize these units, because yeah, a lot of people have pulled them randomly, a lot of people have them on the bench, and they kind of just want to use them again, including myself. So yeah, if you guys have any other units that you think should be on this list or that I left out, I kind of just limited it to 5 on purpose. I didn't want to make this video too long. Let me know in the comments down below what other units you think should be buffed.